Hello and welcome to the PolyInnovator channel. This is a channel for knowledge management for polymaths. And what does that mean? Those are two different subjects that are very interesting on their own, but I found that this whole channel has been about both topics for the longest time. And so I wanted to reframe the channel to be both in one, because that's what it really is. Knowledge management is the organizing of your own data. So that means your note-taking, your journaling, maybe your content creation, and any kind of data that you are creating to organize your life. Project management, task management, all of that in one. Now, polymathy is someone, like a polymath, is someone with many different disciplines, generally 3 or more at an expert level, not just dabbling, but expert level, with an insatiable curiosity. And so this channel comes into this mindset of I'm doing interviews with people who are polymathic, and I'm talking solo videos with these knowledge management tools. And so I wanted to go over essentially what knowledge management is for the audience, because I haven't talked about it just in a basic sense thus far. And so what that means is that I wanted to be able to show you, how do you organize your multidisciplinary life? I have to do that myself, and I might as well show you the system that I created. And so let's get into that. All right, this is my Omni brain, or Omni brain, if you will. I used to call it polybrain. Some people call it a second brain, but I find that the poly and omni monikers are way more apt for the description, because you're doing a lot more than just having a second brain when it comes to this. If anything, you're having a second brain for every single area of your multidisciplinary life. Now, I want to preface this by saying that yes, I am making this content and this system for people who are polymathic, people who are multidisciplinary, multipotentialites, generalists, jack of all trades, whatever term you prefer. I'm making it for people like that. However, this can easily apply to specialists as well. The real kicker is, the reason why I created this system is that the second brain by Tiago Forte, the para method in that case, and other aspects behind that, other systems like that, they were all made before these tools were created. So essentially they were made and then adapted to these new tools. I created this system with these tools in mind, and I've personally used it. I built it in Notion. I've used it now in Obsidian 2 or 3 times, actually. I've rebuilt it in Obsidian. I've used it in Acrium. I've used it in Capacities. I tried in Anytype. I tried in Affine. I've used a ton of different tools with this system, and it works. It may not adapt super well to Capacity since it's very object note-taking focused. However, it still worked. And so let's kind of go over this real quick. You can look over here. I have a few different layers. It is a folder-based structure, which in a lot of Obsidian videos, they often talk about focusing on tags, maybe having little folders as possible. I really like having a folder hierarchy, and I think it helps. In fact, I use tags and folders very, not synonymously, but very interchangeably. And there's even a few plugins like Folder to Graph, which allows your folders to help organize your graph view, which I can show you later, and other things like sort by folder through tags. It's a new plugin that just came out. Let's start off with the beginning here, the Supra level, the yearly level. And so these yearly notes, which I have a plugin right here called Journals. You might see a lot of these different calendars. Especially since I'm an Obsidian nerd, I might take these little tangents to explain how I built this system and the little plugins I'm using. I will make dedicated videos on these later on, but since this is the premiere video, I kind of want to just quickly touch on what I'm using. And so I wanted to be able to take yearly notes. A lot of these little calendars do not have that capacity. You can only click on the days. This is called the Journals plugin with an S at the end. And with that, you can touch any of the days, any of the weeks, any of the months, the quarters, and a year, and it'll generate a note in a pre-designated folder. So I have in this folder my yearly notes. Now, I will say I have not been great at doing my yearly note, and so I'm still working on that on my own development. But I think that by sharing my progress and sharing my experience with it is the kind of key aspect behind this. Yearly goes from the review and the preview of the next year. So reviewing the year prior, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? What can you improve on? What are the things that you got done that you wanted to get done? What are the things that still need to get done? And also double checking with your quarterly alignment. Are you doing things in the past year that are aligned with your goals? So what that means is, we'll get to that when we get to the macro layer here, but every quarter you're kind of checking, are your actions actually aligned with your virtues and values and what you want to accomplish in your life holistically? The next step is the preview of the next year. So planning things out ahead of time. In a more dedicated video, I will show you what the template looks like, but for now, I'm just going to get into the basics here. The preview is starting to plan out. So you're thinking about what projects do you need to get done in every quarter, how are you going to split that up between the months, and then from there, when you get to the quarterly and monthly notes, you can kind of divvy up what projects do I need to get done this week to accomplish what I want to accomplish in this quarter. Now, I definitely approach the monthly and yearly in a more logical sense. However, the quarterly I approach in a more philosophical sense. And I think that balance helps me. I think there's also something I want to note here that I'm just thinking out loud here. I definitely think that all three need both. And maybe I'm only doing half of what I should be doing. I could be wrong. I could just be thinking out loud and I'm just overthinking it. That's kind of the point. Overthinking it is the point of this. And to share all the stuff I'm thinking about while creating this new system, while I have the baseline thing down, I'm still working on the templates. I'm still working on the holistic aspect behind it. And I'm taking in feedback from my coaching clients and people like you who are watching and leaving comments below with questions and concerns and things that you have ideas wise. And so the next layer here, let's get into this, is the 4 pillars in Ikigai alignment. Now, these pages don't have a lot in them because I don't personally need a lot. I think the actual notes for the quarter are in one of my other layers. The yearly one was kind of simple and I moved it there, but I actually have the quarter, monthly, and daily ones, weekly ones in a different folder. I'll explain that in a minute. But every quarter, I want to check whether or not my actions are aligned with my Ikigai, my reason for being, or my 4 pillars, which is a philosophy I created based off of older philosophies, but with a modern take. So let's get into that. The 4 pillars is the mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And those are the 4 major aspects of your life. And they have a dramatic impact of how you feel, how you express yourself, and what you are thinking, and how you physically feel as well. And then you have the Ikigai, your reason for being, your mission, vocation, profession, or what's the other one? Crap, off the top of my head. What are you really interested in? It's like, what are you interested in? What are you good at? What are you able to provide the world? And what can you make money from? And each one of those, while they don't pair up with the 4 pillars, in my opinion, all 4 in each pockets are very important. So I think having all 8, it seems like a lot, but I think that's the most distilled you can get when it comes to the complexity of life. And that's why I'm super excited about it. Even just talking about it now, I'm super excited about it because no one talks about it in that way. They always look at it from a professional standpoint and they get into Ikigai, or they look at it from a philosophical standpoint and they look at maybe the 4 pillars of yoga or Aristotle's principles, or in this case, the 4 pillars, and they only look at it from that half. And I'm trying to give you both halves. Next is the Meso layer, phases, projects, and goals. The only difference between this and the pair method is the extra P, the phases aspect. Now, the phases is a concept I came up with. I mean, I'm sure there's probably other people who have similar ideas, but when I came up with this, it was because I had a lot going on in my own particular career. And I started coming up with this idea for phases because I had multiple different topics and niches that I wanted PolyInnovator to go into. So the way I saw it was PolyInnovator is my personal brand. Everything I do falls underneath there, different layers or different phases that I go into. So the first phase was technically a knowledge management phase around my do-it-yourself modular degree, my self-education endeavor. Started off with me sharing my own content around me learning. Then I realized the framework I created, the knowledge management framework for learning, which is in this system too, was more important. And I think that you all in the audience would benefit from, looking at it, learning more about it. And so that was the first phase. I actually kind of came up with the idea that my swimming knowledge, I teach swimming for over a decade. I'm writing a book on it. It's one of my major phases, even though I don't talk about it much recently. It was my second phase, if you will. And while my next phase was going to be actually the Poly Tools phase, which is my other channel, back then it was called something different, but essentially that's what it was, the content repurposing and content creation brand. I actually focused on doing interviews, and that is what came to be known as the Polymath PolyCast. And so that was the interesting phase of that kind of came out of nowhere. I think that's a prime example where the reason why this phase concept is so helpful is that it is so fluid. That phase came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden now I have this new phase. And so in this mindset, I had this phase for number 1, this phase for number 2, and every project, goal, and task that I had fell into one of those phases. And I often see, maybe this is like an oversimplification, but I often see there's like one big project that I wanted to get accomplished for that phase. at least in this point in my life. Maybe phases last a lot longer than I'm projecting in my head. I kind of see them as little as a year, maybe. I guess maybe even technically speaking, you can have a phase as little as a quarter. I think anything lower than that is just a project. But if you have something that's taking up multiple weeks and months and time for you to accomplish, probably many, many years to accomplish, I think a phase could be your career, for example. So if you have a career in this particular field, that is a phase of your life. Not necessarily phase that's in like time frame per se, but a phase as in one of your areas of focus or expertise. And so swimming is one of mine. Gaming is one of mine. Music is one of mine. I haven't done anything with music just yet, but I'm going to down the line. And so I'm planning out the different phases ahead of time and seeing like, okay, I might not get the timings right. Like I honestly thought I was going to be done with the swimming phase and much farther along with the poly tools phase than I am now. So you're going to maybe get the timeline wrong, but you're just trying to plan out. You have your foundation, and from there you kind of build out what you want to accomplish. You may not know what you want, and sometimes the phases come out of nowhere, but that's why I have this here, because then you can plan out the future phases, keep the old phases still alive, and try to keep them like afloat if you feel like it, or maybe they're done. You don't have to keep them going, but just keeping track of them is the key. Let's get to the next layer here. I don't think I really need to get into the whole projects and goals because that's kind of self-explanatory. Now with Obsidian, project management is hit or miss because depending on if you like Kanban and how that works, Kanban, however you pronounce it, if you like that particular way of methodology for project management, that'll work. I don't care for any of the database plugins. I think Projects is a famous plugin that's getting better and better, but currently in my experience, it's always been broken or not working well enough. And Make that MD never worked at all. So I'm just saying that I don't think that project management, if you're going into this tool for that, it might not work for you. You might need to do capacities per se, or maybe combine capacities with Obsidian. But for me, at the level of project management I'm currently now doing, it works fine. Next layer, the micro layer. This is the, essentially, you have yearly, quarterly, monthly, and now we get down to the weekly. So in the weekly, you're keeping track of your tasks, you're trying to plan out your habits, and habits and systems is a whole nother video topic right there. I think I actually wrote a blog post about it recently. And essentially, your habits build out your systems. Your systems rebuild the habits. If you've done a habit for long enough, you create a system in your life. Like my workout system just happens because I've done it for so long, even when I don't do it consistently for the most part. And I'm able to rebuild my habit relatively quickly compared to others because I have done it for so long. You only have those systems once you've done the habits enough times and for a long enough period. But they're still separate layers, they're still separate ideas. And I wanted to keep track of all the different habits I wanted to do, such as like exercise and stuff like that. I haven't found a particularly good habit tracker just yet. And so that's why this layer is a little bit bland. I don't have much to offer to you just yet on that, but I am working on that myself and I'm hoping that I can help you down the line too. I know there's some really interesting habit tracker plugins, but getting them to work and also getting them to be easily accessible, especially like on mobile, for example, too, that's a whole nother story. Next is one of my favorite layers. That's the daily layer. What are you doing day to day? Input and output, learning and creating. Now, I definitely believe that most people should, to some capacity, be a content creator because that's how the world's becoming. That it's becoming your personal brand is your new resume. If you don't create content, people don't know what you're about, and you're not going to be able to prove yourself to a company that you want to work for, or prove yourself to any investors if you're trying to be an entrepreneur. That is what I'm trying to say. So the input comes in twofold: the inbox and the modular degree. I used to kind of think of them as one and the same, but after getting a really expansive and like, I'll just even show you real quick, just from this RSS feed here, I got tons and tons of articles, and that's just from the last month or so. And those are articles that I now want to save and move on to the other folders. The modular degree is a framework to help organize your learning, and I'm still working on the whole physical structure of an app for that. That's the big project for that. I created a template, and I'm going to release a template for Obsidian here soon too, which means that like that's kind of the big project right now. But the big project in the long run is to create an actual learning management system for you to use that is modular to help probably replace traditional schooling, or at the very least use it in traditional schooling. But then you divide up what you're saving in your inbox into these different folders. So some of those links you saw in the inbox might have been GitHub links. And so I actually have a folder for that because sometimes I want to keep track of plugins or different repositories that I might be using for my own projects. Next is the networking base. I'm not going to open this up just for privacy, but that is my personnel CRM, or my little Rolodex, if you will. So all the guests on my 2 shows, all the shows that I have been on, random people that I want to meet, people I have met that I want to make sure I keep track of different information about, like when's their birthday, or we talked about this when we met that one day, and that way I can keep up with conversations and reference back to what we talked about before. I think it's very helpful. You even notice in the modular degree, there's actually a conversations folder too, right here. And because sometimes conversations can be very powerful learning devices. And if you keep track of them a little bit better and take notes on them, I think that's a great way, not really journaling, but more like just keeping track of what you learned from that conversation. Next is the content ecosystem. I have a lot going on here, a lot of different things I create, but I find that by having this system, I also have a Kanban board for it as well. Not really super keen on it, but at the very least, it helps me prioritize what I need to get done next. This video is something I've been wanting to get done for a while as well. And then finally, you have the journals, which is basically all your daily notes, weekly notes, monthly notes. You could technically put even the yearly ones down there if you want as well. I kind of like the idea of having them, each one of these layers, yearly, quarterly, monthly. I actually got rid of that part of the title because I made it too long of a title for a folder. But on top of that too, I think really what matters was these different terms, the macro, supra. They might be kind of alien to some people if you're not in science, but it definitely helps with the scalability of it. I wanted to give you a scale what to follow. I used to have another layer here for like the hourly, but essentially that was just getting too nitty gritty, and that just comes down to time management and time blocking. Archive is essentially where I keep all my templates, old notes that don't have a home, or something along the lines of like old documents I want to keep track of. So all in all, this system is called the PIOS, the PolyInnovation operating system. Sometimes I call it personal innovation operating system because I really care about that self-development, self-education angle. Now, I chose Obsidian after thorough research. I literally have looked at every single knowledge management tool on the market, nearly every single project and task management tool as well. I don't want to be hyperbolic and say I've seen every project management tool because maybe there's some new ones that have come out since then, but I'm pretty confident in the sense that I've seen pretty much all of them, if not most of them. And because of that, I have seen what is available and what you can do with these tools. I've played with most of them. I may not have played with them enough. Like I definitely think I could do some creative stuff with any type if I could just get used to their language. Afine really piques my interest. AppFlow is really cool. But the UI from all 3 of those was just not the greatest, and I couldn't get past that. I definitely like the minimalism of Obsidian, especially when it comes to the performance and being able to access data quickly. I'm still getting used to Obsidian Sync. I'll be honest. I'm not sure how good I feel like it is. I feel like my phone downloads or my laptop downloads all the files over and over again every time I open it up instead of just updating to the ones that need to be updated. Could be a glitch, could be just how it works. I don't know. Before I end up letting you go, I want to share this one little screen here. And this is my Obsidian graph. Now, I feel like this has changed a little bit too. That's kind of cool. Essentially, every green dot is a tag or a folder. And so you have, like, for example, assets, which are all the images for all the articles there. Then this one's AI, so any topic that's based on AI. This one right here is ideas, my ideas folder. So each one, it could be a folder, it could be a tag. I have a special plugin, like I said, to show up the folders on this graph because I feel like since my system is organized with folders, that should be represented on this brain, if you will. And every white dot is a different page or note or article that I saved or written myself. I have a ton of them on here. I probably have 6,500 notes, I think, something like that. And this doesn't look that amazing compared to some other ones I've seen. And a lot of other ones are way better organized. I'm still on my journey. I might even take a screenshot of this because it does seem different from the last time I took one. But it's one of those things where this is nice. It's novel. It's not important. I just use it as a visual representation of what it looks like and help view the information architecture of my system. Now, for you, knowledge management might be a lot simpler. You don't need a complex system like this. You could still steal my layers and then add in your own templates or your own usability within those layers. I think that the structure I created here is one of the best structures you can use in a knowledge management tool. I'm confident in saying that because it's worked. It's been surprisingly super helpful. And when it comes to your habits and your systems and the stuff you do in life, you don't necessarily rise to your ability. You often fall to the systems and skills that you have accomplished to learn in your life or built up over time. That's probably the best way to put it. Built up over time. And so when you have a system that's not in your brain, that's not relying on your physical, you know, biological computer, and having a digital computer to help you supplement it, this is the whole second brain concept all over again. When you have this supplemental tool, it helps accelerate things. Especially when I was in Notion, I was cranking out a lot more content because the content production system in there was really great. However, everything else was not. I was not note-taking. I was not doing much learning. The actual information architecture was very separated and broken. I was able to rebuild it here and actually have a lot more holistic and connected system. And that's why I like Obsidian a lot more. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down below. I definitely want to answer more questions. I have a lot of ideas about content that I want to make. A lot, actually. But I definitely want to answer your questions when it comes to how do you use the PIOS? How do I just use Obsidian? Are there other tools that you like? I mean, there's a few different ones that I probably want to retry down the line. And I think I made a video actually recently about all the different knowledge management tools out there, but, or at least all the good ones, but there's a lot more than just that. And sometimes what's good for me might not be good for you and vice versa. So again, leave a comment if you have a question. I'm happy to answer. I might even make a video about it. Thank you so much and have a good day.